Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a great day today. Now in preparation for the new Captain America movie coming out pretty soon, I'm going to be reviewing Captain America Civil War, which came out all the way back in 2016. But there's actually some stuff in the new movie that was kind of set up from this movie. So when it comes to this movie, it just has some really great action. This was directed by the Russo brothers, and I think they just do a really good job with the cinematography, the visuals, as well as the fight choreography. I think it's top tier. And this movie also just has a very serious tone. There's some jokes here and there, but for the most part, it's pretty serious, and it just kind of has that Winter Soldier vibe. I think it has the same quality of writing. The pacing is also great when it comes to this movie. I don't think it needed to be any longer or any shorter. I think all the scenes flow together very nicely, and just overall, I don't really have too many problems with this film. I think it's one of the best MCU movies. Now, as I said, this has the same quality of writing as The Winter Soldier, but it has much more main characters than The Winter Soldier because this is about the heroes fighting each other. And it is kind of a crazy coincidence that this came out the same year as Batman v Superman.
Why can't we all just get along?
But anyways, pretty much the premise for this movie, similar to the Civil War comic, is that the government wants to kind of interfere with all these superhero shenanigans going on. Because obviously, if you think about it, if there were really people with superpowers running around in the real world, that would be pretty dangerous, especially with all the destruction being caused. Because kind of the premise here is that while these superheroes do save the day a lot, they also do cause a lot of destruction, which was also the same exact premise for Batman v Superman. So because of that, you do have some heroes that kind of agree with the government, while the other side doesn't really want to change. And it's actually pretty crazy. Iron Man is the one leading the team that actually agrees with General Ross, which if you watched previous films in the MCU, it doesn't seem like something he would do. But he just kind of changes his mind in this movie from this one woman that speaks to him. And just the fact that he had already retired from being Iron Man like twice, and he's just not too much into it anymore. And then you have Captain America that's sticking with his values and that kind of stuff. And so it's very controversial, and there's some solid reasons to be on both sides. It's not like one's necessarily right or wrong. And even though I literally just said that, everyone is always asking the question, who was right? And I will say, in this context, I lean more on Captain America's side, just because I think the government interfering with superheroes in the real world would make more sense, but within the context of this movie, you kind of have General Ross pulling the strings, as well as the main villain, Zemo, which I will say, I think his motivation makes sense. He is one of the more underrated MCU villains, and it is cool that we got to see more of him in Falcon and Winter Soldier. I will say though, I don't think it was necessary to have a villain like him, because the whole premise of this movie is the Avengers fighting each other, and so you wouldn't actually need a villain for that. But he still works because he's obviously framing Bucky and that kind of stuff. And I do like seeing more of Bucky in this movie. His character development is pretty good, and so is Captain America's and Iron Man's, and that's pretty much the main focus here. But just as this movie goes along, it's nice seeing the different heroes. You have Ant-Man and Spider-Man joining the Avengers in the fight, and once you get to the airplane sequence, it's just phenomenal. One of the best scenes in any superhero movie. And then the final battle with just Captain America, Iron Man, and Bucky is also one of the best final battles of any superhero movie. So just from beginning to end, I think this movie is a blast. It's a really fun time, and I really love the vibe here. But there are a few minor problems I do think should be addressed. First of all, while the opening sequence isn't necessarily bad, and it is nice seeing Crossbones in his comic accurate costume, I think the way some of the action was shot was just not my favorite style of how you film those kinds of fights. I think they just changed the camera angle a little bit too much. It was just a little harder to tell what was going on, which is kind of a shame because the fight choreography itself was really good. And then another thing that I think was just a bad decision was the scene when Steve kisses Sharon Carter. That was just kind of unnecessary. And then when you think about it, even though it's really awesome that they brought Spider-Man into the MCU, in terms of the plot, I don't know if it made the most sense for Iron Man to make that decision to bring a kid into this fighting, when his character arc in this movie was supposed to be him making responsible decisions. And I get the justification for it. Having someone with Spider-Man's abilities would be pretty nice, but it just does seem like a little bit of a stretch. But still, I mean, it is kind of worth having him in this movie. Obviously, as soon as the MCU was able to put Spider-Man into any movie, they just put him in this, which I mean was a good decision from a business perspective. They didn't even wait to make it a surprise in the movie, they put it in the trailer. But still, overall, the problems I have with this movie are very minor. I think this is one of the best superhero films of all time. Overall, on the quality scale of 0 to 100, I'll give it a 96%, and I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Marvel. But there still is a big question that needs to be addressed. Is Captain America Civil War actually an Avengers movie? Because because even though this is advertised as a Captain America movie, I think they could have very easily changed the name from Captain America Civil War to Avengers Civil War, and I don't think anyone would have been like, well, actually, this seems more like a Captain America movie. To the film's credit, it does put some focus on Captain America and the dynamic with him and Bucky, but Iron Man's character arc honestly has the same amount of focus as well. So overall, I would actually say this is probably more of an Avengers movie. I even sent out a poll asking what people's favorite Avengers movie was, and I didn't want to include Age of Ultron because even though while some people might argue it's underrated, it's not anyone's favorite, and I thought it would be funny to add Captain America's Civil War into the poll just to see if anyone voted for it, and a lot of people actually did, and I did get a couple comments that were obviously saying, technically it's a Captain America movie, you're not a true Marvel fan or something like that, but honestly I do think it is more of an Avengers movie. But if you've seen it, let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. Are you excited for Brave New World? As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.